What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. Chris Pinell here, breaking down week 1 of the NFL season for DraftKings and FanDuel early look edition. We're still over a week away from Sunday kickoff, so there could be some news that does end up changing the landscape of this slate. And while I'm not anticipating that, I'm still planning on releasing a video later on in the week going over some more updated thoughts. Because like most of you, I cannot wait to do some NFL content, so here we are right now. We'll be talking stacks, going over my player pool position by position. We'll be looking at the games that I like to target and all the data that I do have on my website. Data is your friend, use it to your advantage. And we'll also be taking a look at the optimizer as well. So if that sounds good to you, I am going nowhere all season long. So if you think you're gonna keep coming back, you might as well subscribe and leave a like down below if you enjoy. If not, that's fine. Let's dive right into it. And really quick, if you guys do like what you see on the screen or in the data, you can get it at cpendfs.com. I'll put a link down below. Here's the pricing. Pretty fair compared to everybody else in the industry. So if you want to check it out, be my guest. And I do offer a free week trial, so there's absolutely no reason not to come in and try it out if you're interested. All right, now that my soul has been sold, let's talk some quarterbacks here, because these are the guys that dictate the rest of your lineup. Of course, if you're playing cash games, you don't really care about correlation too much. You're playing the high floor guys, the ones that'll be high owned, have good median projections, they are the ones that everybody else is going to play. Sounds pretty boring, right? Yes, that's because it is. But in tournaments, we want to correlate our lineups as best as possible. Now, there are some stipulations. You don't always have to do this with rushing quarterbacks because they can get there by themselves. But if you were playing a pocket passer like Joe Burrow, if Joe Burrow is scoring points, that means someone else on his team is scoring a lot of points because he is not running the football in 3 times like a Jaden Daniels could. He's not getting 80 yards on the ground. So if Joe Burrow is getting 25, 30 points, that means either Jamar Chase went off, T. Higgins went off, maybe they both went off, or whoever else he throws the football to. I don't really care, but there's going to be other guys that are scoring. And I know a lot of people, I get comments every year saying stacking doesn't always win. Of course, people are going to get lucky every single week. But if you're telling me you are going to be able to pick out which random players out there in a large player pool are going to outscore your stacking options on a given week, and you're going to get it right every single time, you are lying to yourself. So make it easy. If you are playing Joe Burrow, play his pass catching options. If you're playing Baker Mayfield, how is he scoring points? It's either going to Evans, it's going to somebody. And fair warning, this strategy does typically lower your floor because if your quarterback has a bad day, well, the rest of your options are going to have a bad day because you're probably double stacking, if not maybe even bringing a run back in. And if your quarterback's trash, that means your receiving options are probably going to be trash. But that's fine because we are not playing our quarterback with the assumption that he's going to suck. We just have to bite the bullet. You're either going for the shooting for the stars or you're crashing and burning. And sometimes you're going to crash and burn. But when you're absolutely hitting, that's when you get into the top of the tournaments, and it's going to pay off for some of those weeks where the strategy does not work out. But Jaden Daniels, he's not one of those players that you do have to stack with because he can do it with his legs. And if you're looking at the projection I have for him, that rushing floor is quite nice. I'm projecting nearly 10 rushing attempts, nearly 50 rushing yards, and of course a decent chance for a rushing touchdown. It's a built-in passing touchdown floor, if not more, once you factor in the touchdown percentage for Jaden Daniels. And the pricing is very soft this week. Quarterbacks, he's the most expensive at only $7K flat. Jamar Chase is barely over $8K, and then the top tier running backs are not that expensive. I forget the top off the top of my head, but it's not that expensive, so you can pretty much play whoever you want. There's some great cheap quarterbacks this week. I love Joe Flacco, but I mean, a lot of times I found it where I just don't really need to save the money too much. Now, if I'm forcing stacks, of course, yes, but in cash games, it should be very easy to play Jaden Daniels. I would say he's got the highest floor of any quarterback on the slate. Joe Burrow and Joe Flacco, we have the Joe Bowl in Cleveland. I like both options. Both these guys are going to be throwing the football a ton this year. Well, Flacco probably limited time. We'll see how long until he loses the job to one of the rookies, Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders. But at the meantime, you don't have to worry about that. This game is a 45.5 point over under, 26.5 implied team total for the Cincinnati Bengals, 20.5 for Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns. And this game just looks so appealing for DFS purposes, especially on the Cleveland side of things, because we know that Cincinnati Bengals defense was really bad last year. Now, of course, we can't go off a matchup strictly from last season because teams are going to change. It happens every single year, but a bad defense is really hard to overturn in a single season. So I imagine Cincinnati is probably going to be in the back half of things defensively this year. Probably 1, 2, or top 3 when it comes to offense, so it'll counterbalance that. But look at these price tags on Cleveland. Flacco sub 5K. Jerry Jeudy's $5,400. You get David Njoku, who in a pretty small sample size with Joe Flacco, but was awesome in that sample size. He's sub 5K. And of course, the Bengals are going to be a bit more expensive, and the Browns defense is a bit better, but it's still the Bengals offense, and their offense is better than the Browns defense. Burrow's $6,900, Jamar Chase at $8,100, T. Higgins at $64. I don't really love the rest of the stacking options because they're pretty hard to trust, but I love Chase Brown in general. Like, I love this game. I love both of these teams, and they'll definitely be very heavily influenced in my builds. Another game I really like is this Tampa Bay Atlanta game, 48.5 point over under, which I believe is tied for the highest on this slate. Only a 1.5 point spread. We're in the Dome in Atlanta, don't have any weather to worry about. And NFC South showdown. These games are typically pretty good for fantasy because usually their defenses are not that good, and their offenses do have decent enough pieces to where they can put up points. But at the Tampa Bay side of things, Baker Mayfield, career season last year. I'm sure he's going to regress a little bit. Losing Liam Cohen, that could definitely be a bit of a game changer for that offense. I'm hoping it's not too much because I do like Baker Mayfield quite a bit. And Chris Godwin's going to be out for the first month of the season, but we still have Mike Evans. We have Ibuka to work with. Cade Otton was pretty good at times last year when guys went down, but this is a loaded game from a fantasy perspective. I mean, on Atlanta, Michael Penix, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, the ghost of Kyle Pitts. Maybe he'll be good one day. We'll see. But Baker Mayfield, Bucky Irving, Mike Evans, Ibuka. I mean, this is just a really fun game. Definitely one I am looking to stack up quite a bit. But I would reserve both for GPP only, but you can make some really fun stacks with that. A couple of stragglers on here, Kyler Murray and Tua. I am not in love with them, but I thought they were decent enough to make the player pool this week. It's just a soft matchup versus New Orleans. Decent implied team total here at 24.5. They're going to be on the road, but you can make some interesting stacks with Kyler and say either Trey McBride or Marvin Harrison. You could run it back with an Alvin Kamara if you want. I don't think that's something necessary because New Orleans, it's not going to be a great team this year. But I'm fine with Kyler. Not my first choice, though. And same for Tua. I like the price tag. He's just very hit or miss, and he does not run the football at all. So he has one of the lower floors at the quarterback position. But Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, they're all healthy for now. Devon Shannon out of the backfield. Of course, we did lose Jonnu Smith this year, who was awesome, especially the second half of last season. But at $5,800, I don't think he's going to have that much ownership. And this game does have a sneaky high total at 46.5. They're also in the Dome in Indiana and only a 1.5 point spread. So this game probably going a bit under the radar, and that's why I do have interest in Tua, certainly on a cash game choice. And the last one we have here is a game stack of the Carolina Panthers and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now I'll throw it on the screen right now, but these were the two worst defenses last year in EPA. And also the Carolina Panthers defense last season was historically bad, gave the most points of all time. Maybe they're a bit better this year, but like I said, it's very, very difficult to overturn a defense and make them good. So I fully expect the Carolina Panthers defense to be bad once again. Pretty solid total here at 46.5, only a 3-point spread. And lots of good options here that aren't going to break the bank. We have Bryce Young and Ted McMillan, someone I am very high on this year. Absolutely love Ted. I think he could do well in this game for sure, and I'll be definitely looking to stack him up in GPPs. Then the flip side, Trevor Lawrence, that feels a little bit more gross. They did get Liam Cohen this year, and we saw what he did with Baker Mayfield in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is as good as Baker, but I mean, you can make a lot of fun game stacks here that aren't breaking the bank. Trevor Lawrence with Brian Thomas Jr. is certainly an option. I'm not sure if I want to go with Travis Hunter in week one, but I really like the Lawrence and Brian Thomas connection, run it back with Ted McMillan, or you could flip that, and I think that sounds pretty good. Looking at the stack board here, I do want to show you guys an example of some visuals because data is fun to talk about, but sometimes seeing it actually makes a little bit more sense. So if we toggle to DraftKings here, because that's what everyone happens to use pretty much. I mean, I like FanDuel, and I want to give a quick mention. FanDuel is running basically a free roll for the milli. You can 150 max, the $5, everything that does not cash, you can get your money back as far as credit. So you can't withdraw it. So I don't think it's completely free. But I mean, I'm going to be playing that, so it makes absolutely no sense for me not to just take the credits from the one and the lineups that I do not end up cashing. So I mean, it's basically a free shot at the milli. I'd highly recommend checking that out. But anyway, let's look at team salary versus implied team total. This is something I like looking at because if I can find cheaper teams with higher implied team totals, how do you score fantasy points? You do it by scoring touchdowns. And of course, moving the ball down the field. But to score touchdowns, you got to move the ball down the field. So you can inherently find some decent value here. Commanders actually popping quite nicely in that department. The Jacksonville Jaguars. So we kind of talked about pretty nice GPP stack there. And the Indianapolis Colts and New England Patriots, a couple that surprised me right there. I said that the Dolphins and Colts game is a bit sneaky, and I think that kind of clarifies that. And the Miami Dolphins are not too far behind. They're right there on the other side. Also wanted to take a look at team total versus projection. This is their overall team projection. And once again, the Bengals are taking the cake here. I mean, projections like them, Vegas likes them. It's hard not to like the offense, right? They project so well with Joe Burrow under center and all their elite fantasy options with them. Great RB1, 2 great wide receivers, and it's basically all you need to be up at the top most weeks. Buccaneers pretty high, which makes sense. They have an overall fully good offense. Washington Commanders. Now, the Browns are a little bit lower, but I think there's some context with that. Like some of these teams that we really like for DFS this week, and they're going to have some pretty decent value plays. The Browns are centered around like 3 people. this week. The running back situation's a bit murky, but Joe Flacco, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku. Now, they're not the best projection plays in the world, but at their price tags, they scream value. So it's basically centered right around those three guys. And that's why they're a little bit lower in the list, not showing up as elite plays because of their price tags. And not the entire team is not that great, of course. It's just a couple of guys. And as we go position by position, we're going to start to fill out a lineup. Do not copy and paste this, guys. If you were stealing lineups you see on YouTube, you deserve to lose. I am building this for fun. I will not be playing this lineup. It's just simply following the process. We're picking a quarterback, and then we're just building a lineup based off the guys we talk about. So just for some fun here, not the absolute first choice, but let's just play $4,900 Joe Flacco, and we can build a really fun lineup. Now, spoiler alert, we're probably going to be playing Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku with them, and then we can basically play whoever we want after that. So I think that sounds kind of fun. And moving on to the running backs, these guys aren't as fun to talk about most weeks, but I got to be honest, this is a pretty loaded running back slate, and running backs seem more in than they have been in recent years. So I might have to take back my statement, but lots of good options. Pricing is very soft this week. I know we have Bill down there at the minimum of $4,000. This was later in the season when pricing was sharper. I would say he's probably more necessary, but I'll be honest, I haven't really found myself needing him because I can kind of play whoever I want. Especially if you go with like a Joe Flacco build, the cheap quarterback, you definitely don't need to play Bill. You can play some fun running backs. So if I am playing cash games, like I said, great options all around. But for me personally, I love Christian McCaffrey. He's only $7,300 and he is healthy right now. He's probably going to be more expensive as the season progresses, and he's probably not going to be as healthy when the season progresses. So let's play him now when he's healthy as it gets. $7,300, and there's no one left in this offense. I mean, Jawan Jennings is banged up. Brandon Ayuk is not going to be playing. Deebo Samuel is gone. It's George Kittle. It's Ricky Pearsall, and it's Christian McCaffrey. He's going to get the ball. If he's getting the ball 20 plus times in this game, with obviously some of that being targets. Very small sample size last year, but they did average 4.8 targets per game. Very small, but we have a long history of Christian McCaffrey being involved in the passing game. So I love him, $7,300. And I love Devon Chan, under $7,000. When he has a healthy Tua under center, he is a top 5 back in PPR, which is the scoring that we have on DraftKings. $8,200 on FanDuel, not as appealing, but $1,600 on DraftKings looks amazing. And like I said, I like this game a lot for tournaments, Miami and Indianapolis. And just, it's $1,600. We have a high floor, we have a high ceiling. We know the ceiling that we give it to Chan. He's going to push for being the most targeted back in the NFL this year with Tua under center, unless he happens to go down. But we know he's healthy right now. So love a Chan, love CMC. And other than that, I think most of these guys are basically the same. And Bijan Robinson, one of the best running backs in football. There's quite a few good ones. Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley. But Bijan, for me, for fantasy this year and season long, he is my RB1. He's going to get 20 plus opportunities every single week. We had 4.2 targets per game last year, which is really nice. I mean, there's no reason not to like Bijan this week if you can afford him. Be my guest. Bucky Irving's fine in tournaments. Jonathan Taylor's fine in tournaments. Chase Brown probably has one of the safer floors in the league. I'd say he's kind of similar to Devon Chan, maybe not as explosive, but he's the RB1 that gets the lion's share of all the snaps in this offense, and they're going to be putting up a ton of points, and he's going to be in scoring position, and that equals fantasy points typically. Not my favorite spot versus the Browns, but these price tag on both sites at 66 and 69 look pretty good to me, and someone I will definitely be getting to. 3 very boring plays here in Alvin Kamara, James Conner, and Chuba Hubbard, but I do like the spots for them. Alvin Kamara more so just because he's going to have the target share that does give him the floor. Although this Saints offense is not something that's very appealing to me these days because of the quarterback situation. And just overall, it looks very nasty. I mean, Spencer Rattler doesn't really get me going too much. James Conner is really the most unsexy pick you can make, but he just continues to get production. Averaged under 20 opportunities per game last year, right around 18, which is still very nice. And he's only $6,100. Should be a positive game script for him against New Orleans here, 5.5 point spread, decent implied team total. I would say there's a very decent chance he does get into the end zone here. And I have Ashton Jeanty on this player pool, not because of DraftKings, but on FanDuel, he's only $6,400. That is nearly $2,500 cheaper than Bijan Robinson. That's over about $1,500 cheaper than Christian McCaffrey. He's cheaper, $1,300 more than Bucky Irving, which makes no sense to me. So if you are playing on FanDuel, Ashton Jeanty will be very popular because of how cheap he is, but he really does make things fit for a guy that's going to get 20 plus opportunities and has talent. All right, back to the build. We already have Joe Flacco, so that means we have our pick of the litter at running back because we can spend some money here, and the stacking options are not that expensive. So we could go Bijan. We had the money for him, but I'm just going to get the guys that project a little bit better on a salary basis here. So we're going to go with Christian McCaffrey at $7,300. And then we'll also grab Devon Chan here at $6,900. Get a piece of that Miami Indy game because I'm not stacking it in the specific build, so I want to get a piece of it somehow. And moving on to wide receiver, I usually do not spend too much time here breaking these guys down because I feel like after we've talked about stacks and quarterbacks by now, I think we get the idea of what wide receivers that we do end up liking. And I'm not someone that cares at all about the wide receiver cornerback matchup. These guys move around too much. There's so many things that can happen during the game for me that really thinks it matters too much. I mean, you can have a wide receiver that's in the worst matchup possible and he could get 100 yards and a touchdown. And I mean, for me, it does not matter. I mean, if that's something you like, by all means go for it, but I don't waste my time with it. So for cash games, I would say if we're just trying to single out a few guys, I mean, Jamar Chase, if you had the money for him, he would be the priority. I mean, the best fantasy player in the league. He's awesome. He's got the best quarterback, arm talent wise. Throwing the football, high implied team total. If you had the money, Jamar Chase is your man. If you're looking to save some money, Jerry Jeudy on the other side of this game makes a ton of sense. He's $5,400. He is Joe Flacco's #1 guy. He's probably going to push for double-digit targets in this game, and the wide receivers behind him are not that appealing. We have Cedric Tillman, Jamari Thrash, Isaiah Bond. It's not pretty. So it's basically just going to be him and David Njoku. The run game, not really sure if it's going to be great either. Jerome Ford, Dylan Sampson, obviously Judkins screwed himself over, so we're not going to be seeing him in week 1. And if you are looking to save some even more money, Ricky Pearsall, I do like at $4,500. George Jennings is very iffy to play this game, and if he happens to be out, there is literally nobody else the wide receiver position to throw the ball to that has any name value other than Pearsall. He's only $4,500, so he would make a ton of sense as a salary saver. Everybody else is basically tied to tournament style quarterbacks. Like if we have not Nico Collins, I just like him because he's his price tag, and I mean, he's going to get a ton of targets in that game. But like if we have Trevor Lawrence or we're stacking up this Jacksonville Carolina game, Brian Thomas makes a lot of sense. Ted McMillan on the other side. If we happen to go with Tua, we have Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. I think you guys get the idea. I guess one guy we could hit on is Malik Neighbors. We didn't talk about any of the Giants so far because, well, of course, for the Giants, but they should be trailing in this game. They're on the road in Washington. And I don't even hate a way of like, you don't even have that stack with Jaden Daniels, but you could play Jaden Daniels alone, and then you could run it back with Malik Neighbors with nothing else. And I don't hate that because Malik Neighbors is going to get forced into targets because they're going to be trailing and we know how talented he is. So that's something to think about as well. All right, heading it back over to our build here. We're going to run it back with Jamar Chase since we already have the Cleveland stack going, which I will complete now. Jerry Jeudy, we're going to get the wide receiver 1. And then, like I said, we're going to be playing David Njoku, so I'll just throw that in right now. So we basically have the meat and potatoes of our lineup. We have Joe Flacco stacked with Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but with these price tags, it lets us have some fun. We're going to run it back with Jamar Chase, and we have Christian McCaffrey and Devon Chan. We're still averaging over $4,000 left per player, which when you factor in a defense, that's going to save us some money because it's probably going to be around $3K. That's going to leave us enough wiggle room to work with. And got to be honest, not a whole lot to like here at the tight end position. David Njoku seems like the very obvious value to me with Joe Flacco under center at this price tag versus Cincinnati. If you happen to forego David Njoku because of the ownership, I mean, just really any of the top 3 tight ends here. Brock Bowers at 65, Trey McBride at 62, George Kittle at 58. Honestly, Kittle, there's just nobody to throw the ball to besides him and Pearsall, it looks like. I mean, Jennings might play, but I mean, George Kittle should be in line for a pretty decent game here, so I do like him quite a bit. But I'm not just going to sit here and tell you that Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, and George Kittle are good at football. I think you guys get that. If you're looking for a punt option, Darren Waller, he's been ramping up his production. If he's fully good to go, getting majority of the snaps here, I don't hate it. I mean, we saw the tight end position used quite often by Tua last year. So at the price, it might be worth something. But let's fill the rest of this lineup out. I am just going to see whatever kind of defense we have money-wise. Because I know what kind of price range you're going to be looking at. So for me, we talked about a couple of these value wide receivers. I really like Ted McMillan. I do want a piece of that game, so we'll throw him in there. He's $5,200. Flex spot probably puts us like in a Ricky Pearsall range. Just kind of eyeballing here. Austin Eckler, I mean, he's okay, but I don't really want to go that route. Jaden Higgins, not yet. I don't think it's time for him yet. But we do have Ibuka. We do have Ricky Pearsall. I think at 45? So Pearsall's probably the cashier option, but we don't have any pieces of this Tampa Bay Atlanta game, and I really would like to. So just know Pearsall is definitely the safer choice here, especially if no Jennings. But we'll take Ibuka just for the fun of it, right? And that leaves us with 2,100 left for defense. I usually don't care who my defense is. 49ers, we have Christian McCaffrey. I mean, that's not the worst correlation play. So don't copy and paste this, guys. I built it on the fly with you. Please take more time. But Flacco, double stack with Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku. Ran back with Jamar Chase. Some awesome running backs in Christian McCaffrey and Devon Chan. We have Ibuka in the flex to get a piece of that game, which I don't think any of these guys do play at 4 p.m., so I think it's fine to have Ibuka there. Then the 49ers defense and pairing that with Christian McCaffrey. Not a big deal because he can catch passes, but for the stack sense, I guess it looks good. All right, so let's just crunch some lineups really quick. I'm not going to really play with the settings too much. I just want to see what kind of populates just based off basic projections. And that can kind of give you guys an idea of what the field might do a little bit. Of course, they're going to be influenced by projections a little bit. We'll put some randomness on just to try to lessen that influence a bit. QB stack, minimum 2. We can specify a bring back. I'm going to disallow 10 in the flex just for the specific build here. And of course, we could pick what stacks we want to go with and put the percentages in, but I am not going to do that right now. So let's just optimize 20 really quick and see what we end up getting. We'll take a look at the exposure tab here. It should populate in a second. All right, so I actually switched it to 150 to get a larger sample size here, but as you can see, it's almost done. I believe we're at 132 lineups. So they're building now. We have the lineup cards down below, and if we want to look at the actual lineups here, so just for example, up here, keep in mind, we're using a lot of randomness. We have a gnarly lineup 1 here of Sam Darnold with JSN, AJ Barner ran back with Ricky Pearsall. Pretty interesting lineup there, but I want to look at the exposures mainly. Looks like we have all 150 built. We'll start by quarterback, and as you can see, that value of Joe Flacco, it's basically because his pass catching options are just so cheap with him. It's so easy to make a stack, and then you get to load in the Jamar Chase of the world. You get to load in these elite level running backs, and that's why it kind of makes a lot of sense to like Joe Flacco this week. I don't like him enough to play 35%, and that's something I would definitely have to play around with, say in max exposures and mins and things like that. But a lot of Jaden Daniels, Brock Purdy. I think it's because also his options are not that expensive. Ricky Pearsall, George Kittle, kind of very easy to make that work. Looking at the running backs, 2 guys that I like the most, Christian McCaffrey and Devon Chan right now. Basically everybody in our player pool. Jalen Warren popped more than I imagined he would. Looks like Bijan, I think it's because of the price point. Like you can get very similar production, at least projection-wise, of course. It's not always going to be the end-all be-all out of CMC and Devon Chan, which is kind of why it's pushing him down. But like I said, it's something you got to play around with exposures. If you want more of them, you can always boost them with, say, just boost the projection up. And as you can see, it's going to boost them up every single time. As for the wide receivers, like Jerry Jeudy, Ricky Pearsall, and Jamar Chase, right now, that's kind of like my 3 favorite cash game wide receivers. Of course, my opinion could change in a week, but they seem pretty easy to get to. And kind of the rest looks like stacking options. Something I would say, like we had Jaden Daniels, you could specify to not have him be double stacked. For example, if you want to go with a team role here, we could pick Washington and we could say a max of 1 or even 0 if you wanted to. So you'd have to specify that, but I didn't take the time to do that just because we're kind of looking at just what projections like based off of very simple rules here. Tight ends, David Njoku, no surprise here. A lot higher than the rest than George Kittle. Zach Ertz, just because it's trying to force 2 stacking options with Jaden Daniels. And DST, Broncos, Bengals, which that's probably about in every single non-Joe Flacco line, but I get it. Patriots defense, Raiders, 49ers, and if we look at the total, a couple of Browns here, Ricky Pearsall, Christian McCaffrey, Devon Chan, Jamar Chase. So with that being said, that's all for you guys this week. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, or even if you didn't, make sure you leave a like down below. Scott Chan for brand new. If you want any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. I'd be more than happy to answer them. If you want to check out all the extra content on Patreon or the new website, you can find that link down below in the description. I wish you all the best, and I'll see y'all next time.